Hello and welcome to Chapter Chat with Sarah. Here we share true life stories. In Chapter 11 of my book, Healing Your Life, Isabella dreamed about how her life was going to be. She said she wanted to be awesome, striking, and bodacious. Isabella was our guest on episode 6 of this podcast, and she shared with the listeners that she made a lot of bad decisions and choices that took her life and her children's life down the wrong path. She urged listeners to reach out to resources and ask for help, something she said she wished she had done sooner. BetterHelp is one of those resources, and they are the sponsor of this podcast. They make it their mission to make starting therapy easier, to help you with making positive changes in your life. With over 7,000 reviews and a 4.3 rating on Trustpilot, BetterHelp is a platform you can trust and one that will match you with the right therapist based on your completed questionnaire. To get started, go to betterhelp.com/Sarah Shaw and receive 10% off your first month of therapy. You can also find this link in the podcast description and on my website. Once again, the link is betterhelp.com/Sarah Shaw. Today's guest is Catherine, and she is chapter 15 in my book, Healing Your Life. Hello, Catherine, and welcome.
Hello.
Catherine, your name in the book is, of course, Catherine, but your stage name is Abbigale Rose, and you are the music for the podcast, right?
Yes, I am.
Can you tell us a little bit about Abbigale Rose and your music and where you've performed?
That's a great question. I've actually performed as far west as Needles, California, as far east as Atlantic City, and it varies from high-end restaurants to private events to opening for Lacey J. Dalton, performing a concert for Netflix-sponsored events in Wyoming. Basically, if they need music, I'm there. And primarily what I do is acoustic covers, live looping of hit songs that are recognizable. Most people would know them from movies, TV, if not radio, depending on their generation. But the song that I wrote that is a part of the podcast now is actually one of my very few originals, based on a little bit of my life, a little bit of my daughter's life, some of my aunts on my father's side's life, and then my sister's best friends was also a part of the story, but I gave her a happy ending because she actually did not survive her domestic violence encounter. But yes, that's a little bit about me. Primarily cover artist, but I do have less than a handful of originals.
I'm going to say I'm a big fan, and several of the people I know are big fans. So keep doing what you're doing because you truly are a special talent. So going back, Abbigale Rose, Catherine, but in the book, Chapter 15, in Healing Your Life, your subtitle that you gave was, I put them first before myself for everything. So what did you mean by that?
That is in regards to my kids. I have 2 kids, and now I'm a single mom of them, but literally my entire life right now, and since they've been born, has been thinking about them and what they need and trying to be the person I need to be for them and to be the support that they need. So I'm very focused on how my life impacts the lives of my children.
All right. And you also have siblings. You have a brother and a sister. Could you tell us a little bit about what your childhood was like and how it shaped you for, how you live your life today and some of the choices that you've made in life?
Sure. So not to give any spoilers for chapter 15, but I'm the oldest of 3. And for those of you who pay attention to like generational things, my parents are younger boomers and I'm an elder millennial, if that kind of sets the stage at all for some of you. And we grew up in a very religious household. My parents were worship leaders since, they started out doing that before I can even remember. My dad's dad, my paternal grandfather, was a worship leader also. So we're very involved in a lot of small country churches until I was about 12 when my paternal grandfather passed away. And then we just became more consumers in the church and not so much on the serving side of it. So that shaped my entire childhood. So what that looks like is, spare the rod, spoil the child. What that looks like is, um, in a not so directly stated way, but definitely felt way, children are second-class citizens. It's about the parents and parent focus. Everything was about punishment rather than reward. When you look at how they motivated us, and in a lot of ways, it felt like we kind of just existed to serve my parents specifically, but also the needs of our other relatives, like something as simple as being required to give hugs and kisses to relatives that we didn't know very well, so that their feelings weren't hurt. Like that embodied not having any boundaries of my own, because I was told that I wasn't allowed to say no. I had to, like, my body basically wasn't my own. I owed it to these relatives to make them feel loved, regardless of my own emotions, and all of that accumulated into someone who really struggles to have boundaries, that applies to my siblings as well, and a very toxic, people pleasing mentality where I feel like I have to earn love. And if I have someone in my life who isn't really happy with anything I do, it's a very, very toxic cycle for me.
I'm happy that you explained that era, like, you grew up and your parents and yourself, because I think that was how parents felt that children needed to be. I mean, you had chores to do, you cleaned the house, you did all these things before you were ever allowed to go out and play and have fun. And punishment seemed to be the way that you kept children in line. And I think some of that is good, but it is so true in so many people's lives in the age group that you're in, and even before that, that it was punishment first, and behavior was, the most important part of raising your children, and the love was last. I think, and I wouldn't say it was last, but it seemed like it was hard to please them, that you were kind of like almost a slave to them, like, go take care of this, and then we can maybe do something fun. It struck a nerve for me when you talked about if you had gotten at least one atta girl or way to go or good job, or were those things that you didn't hear very often or at all?
I would not say that supportive verbal cues were very present in my life, because I cannot think of a time as I'm sitting here where, one of my parents stepped up and said, you know, I really appreciate this, or you did such a great job. I did really well in school. I didn't really have to try, and I got A's and B's, but that was never a situation where, there was any recognition. The only recognition really was when something was wrong. So my siblings, on the other hand, struggled in school. And I can actually remember times I understand that they don't understand that they were doing this. But now looking back as an adult, my parents were triangulating me against my siblings, because then suddenly in that moment, even though I wasn't receiving any praise for doing things well or for making them happy with what I was doing, they would use something like me getting good grades as a way to communicate failure to my siblings, which then is horrible even to this day for my siblings and my relationship. We really don't have much of a relationship because it's a way of pitting us against each other. And if that, them being shamed in a way, was like the only form of praise. So I wasn't being shamed. And that was my source of at a girl. And that's a horribly toxic place to be in. But I do want to preface that, I understand as an adult where my parents were coming from. I'm not blaming them. They did so much better than their parents did. We could do 6 podcasts on stories I've heard about their parents and their parents before them. So we're not just talking about me and what I experienced. This is generations of people before me trying to do better than what they got. But what they got was so toxic that it remained toxic through my generation. And in fact, I've broken at least one of the generational curses, but my daughter and I have had conversations where it's going to be up to my daughter and my son to break the one that I couldn't myself.
And you're making such a good and important point, because it is true. I mean, I lived through that myself, and that's what we were, kind of discussing, is that it's just the way that it was at the time, that it's not that they were being bad, or I think that that's how they thought that they should raise their children and how it should be. And so it keeps evolving, and we can all learn from that. And that's why we do the podcast. It's kind of like, there's a lot of healing that needs to go on for so many people throughout things that they've endured during childhood and adulthood. And this is important to know that you're not alone, that these are the kind of things that were going on for a lot of people. In the book, too, Catherine, you said that God brings us together with our soulmate, that was something that you were taught also and believed in. So where did that come from? And then how did that work out? Because, I'm not here to debate till death do us part is not right. But I had a failed first marriage myself. And I know that for me personally, I missed a lot of red flags in my first, husband marriage choice, and it didn't turn out well. So I think, again, it's kind of like, okay, how we were raised, what we believed. And again, I'm not debating that you shouldn't try to stay married. I did try to stay married, but it was not healthy for me. And I'm very happy. And I think my children thrived a whole lot better afterwards. Would you agree that you found the same thing?
Yes. And it took me a long time to get to that point. There was a lot of shame in divorce because in religious communities, that's a failure, especially for women. I'm not sure why that is. I think culturally, religiously, at least in the United States, in the Christian realm, failure of marriage really is a negative mark more for women than it is for men. But you asked about the soulmate comment that I had made. So because everything my family did was viewed through their perception of Christianity, and I think that that's important, their perception, because there's different sects that highlight different things. Adam was created, and then Eve was created for Adam. So number one, Eve was created for Adam, according to the perception of my parents' religion in this area. So your women are lesser, you're created for, and because these two humans were created for each other to be companions, that means that is like a part of the original God construct for relationships. So, you're not supposed to just marry anyone. You're supposed to be searching for your soulmates and who God has destined for you. So that lends itself to overlooking a lot of red flags. But I'm going to be honest, back then, I did not understand what a red flag was, because when you're living in a sea of red flags and that's your life, it's normal for you. A red flag and how you feel when people treat you poorly, that becomes a normal feeling. So that's just what you expect. Further, what a lot of people, when you talk about domestic abuse or abuse in general, they tend to think that that's just or just physical. And there's financial abuse, there's emotional abuse, there's mental abuse. There's a whole list of subcategories that are abuse. It's not just getting punched in the face for, speaking out of turn or whatever the excuse is that's given for it. So situations where there is emotional and mental abuse, it creates this expectation that that's the norm. And when you meet someone who is, in the words of my therapist, she cannot diagnose, but given she's been working with me 3 to 4 years, my ex fits a malignant narcissist pattern. It living in a sea of red flags made me the perfect target, because I'm I'm highly empathetic. I'm attuned to walking on eggshells because how someone else feels motivates me to make them happy, because if something's not right, then that's my responsibility to fix it, to make them feel better. Something's wrong with me if I'm not doing that. So unknowingly, the religious experience of my parents and how they raised us made me a perfect target to not be able to recognize someone who is a malignant, covert narcissist, because we have grandiose, where it's obvious when you can tell when someone is self-inflated and thinks that they're more important. But then covert, you would meet them on the street. You would think that they're the nicest person. Anytime that you're around them, you think that they're just great. They're always offering to help you. But behind closed doors, they are monsters to the people they're supposed to care about the most.
And that really hits home for so many people, what you're saying. That the part that I learned from you when we were interviewing and writing the book was flying monkeys, because what they show on the outside to other people is they are this great person, and then somehow they're able to paint an awful picture of you or the person that they're married to, and other people believe that because all they see is this great person. So I had not heard the term flying monkeys. I knew about red flags, but flying monkeys, I immediately went, oh my gosh, this is so true in so many cases. And it makes you very much more aware and kind of watch out for that. So for the listeners, can you kind of talk about that part of it as well?
Absolutely. So when it comes to flying monkeys, usually that is in this example, would be my ex's immediate family. Most, if not all, of our mutual friends, and even people who worked with my ex. But there was one gentleman in particular. He would travel from out of town. He would come over for dinner when I was married all the time, spent a lot of time with us playing video games and hanging out like a friend. But my only connection to him was because he worked with my ex. So from every angle of community that surrounded me, with the exception of my parents and siblings, and mostly that's because I wasn't talking about the things that were happening to me. Because when you talk openly about it, it opens the door for people to say that that's not true. And when you are emotionally crippled from the kind of abuse from a narcissistic relationship, your feedback from other people really impacts you more than it should. You believe them. So they're telling you that you must be lying. This person has always been great around me. I've never experienced that. The bitter woman trope that gets applied to a lot of women when they stand up to talk about things that happen behind closed doors, and people just accuse them of being liars. It's a huge trauma. So not only are you being abused by, the narcissistic family member or husband or even ex-husband, because it doesn't stop, they're utilizing these friends and family members and community members to surround you with people who are telling you that you're wrong and that you're lying, and that there must be something wrong with you. It's really this. I didn't realize it till I'm talking about it now and kind of processing through the extent. I was so lonely the first 8 years of my divorce. I lost all my friends because none of them believed me when I would try to open up. And because I look like a hot mess from all the trauma and the abuse, and my ex looks great on paper, type A personality, very successful. It's really easy to believe. Let's put it this way. If you look at someone and you deem them like, oh, this is a good person, and someone comes to you and says, no, these are the things that are happening behind closed doors, you have a choice in that moment to open up and have a conversation and realize that maybe what you see people presenting you in public is not who they really are. It's just a mask. Or you can continue to believe that your judge of character, what you see in your perception, is 100% totally accurate, and continue to believe that that person is what you think they are instead of what this person who has the closest relationship with someone that you can have is saying that, that they're actually an abusive person, a narcissistic person. I'm actually starting to feel kind of empathetic now for the flying monkeys. It's a situation where you're asking them to doubt themselves. And once you find one person where you're like, oh, geez, well, I didn't realize that this person was like that. You have to do a lot of internal work. It makes you question everybody else that you think was a good person. So the reality is it's really easy to be a flying monkey because you just you don't have to question anything. You get to keep living the belief that you have. So when an abused person is asking people to acknowledge the truth that they lived and that they're telling them, a flying monkey literally cannot, because it would change their entire worldview. I apologize. This isn't the place for processing, but I'm doing it right now. I can't stop myself.
No, and I think it's valuable for so many people because I think we can relate to this not only in marriages too. It's kind of like in, maybe working with someone and they put you off as the bad person and you're not, but it's just a narcissistic personality and they use other people to pit people against each other. It's just a horrible way of treating others. And I, for the life of me, cannot figure out why someone could feel good about themselves if they're kind of doing that, trying to destroy someone else. But it's all around us. And it's very, very hurtful when you're married and you have children and you're trying to make things work and then you get a divorce and then you have this to face too. So like you said, you were lonely. You lost your friends because of a toxic, narcissistic person who just tried to destroy you personally and mentally and every which way. I my heart goes out to you.
And it's not just like they will even use your children. I think that's an important part, because that's especially hurtful. I'll give you an example. My daughter came to me once and she said, Mom, these friends were over at Dad's house this weekend, and Dad was telling a story about how you threw a laundry basket at him once, like talking about how abusive you were to him. And I said, well, that's really interesting. Can I ask you a question? And my daughter said, sure. And she was all of 9 years old. And you have to be really careful, right? When you're in a situation where there's a narcissistic co-parent, because you want to help your kids see the red flags, but you can't tell your kids that they're the red flags. You have to teach them how to think, not how to just believe you, because just believing what someone says is a huge trap, as we talked about. It turns you into a flying monkey. It makes you dependent on other people for your barometer of what reality is. But anyway, so I said, so can I ask you a question? And my daughter said, sure. And I said, you live with me the majority of the time. And she said, yes. And I said, okay. Back as far as you can remember, have you ever known me to have all of my clean laundry folded and not in baskets? And she said, well, no, the clean laundry is always in baskets and dirty laundry is always in hampers. And I said, right. So have you ever seen baskets or hampers completely empty? She said, no, there's always laundry. And I said, okay, do you think that I'm strong enough to throw a basket full of laundry at someone? And she said, not those baskets, Mama. Because they're usually, 2 or 3 loads of full laundry, because I hate folding. I hate folding laundry. I'll do any housework, but I hate folding laundry. So in that moment, she's like, well, you're right. You don't have empty baskets to throw at someone. And I said, okay, now what is your experience with me? Have I ever thrown anything at you when I've been mad or when I'm not mad at any time? And she said, no. And I said, okay, well, you have your lived experience with me. You have insight into how I am behind closed doors in my basket system for laundry. Now you have to decide if what you heard your dad say was true or if your lived experience with me is true. And it's a constant thing. My daughter doesn't have to see him anymore, but my son still does. So there's still this tightrope of him making comments and me doing my best not to react and to point out the flaws in his statements, if that makes sense.
Right. You're not trying to put him in a bad place, but you're kind of pointing out that this really doesn't apply to me, that maybe can you see it this way? Because, so many people fail to realize, the narcissist that is that so many times they're really hurting the children. It's just not good to put the spouse in the gutter and complain about them, because it affects the children for sure. On our next episode,
we were arguing and I was holding my daughter in my arms. He grabbed my head, slammed it into the wooden closet doors. The panic of having someone physically grab you and slam you into something while they're screaming at you and you're pregnant and you're holding your baby. It was traumatizing.
So that's all for today. Before we go, we want to let you know that both of these books are available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and many other bookstores. You can also follow me on my website, sarahshaw.org, Facebook at Sarah Shaw, X, Instagram, and YouTube. Please tune in next week for part 2 of this episode. Until then, remember this verse: "But those who hope in the Lord will renew their strength. They will soar on wings like eagles. They will run and not grow weary. They will walk and not be faint." Isaiah 40:31.
You've got to